All right, so welcome everyone. I'm assuming we're live. Maybe I could ask you if you're here, maybe you could type in the chat just where you're joining us from. So we're here in Ottawa, Sophie and I, but if you could type in the chat, which is to the right-hand side, where are you joining us from today? So we see Ottawa, like us. Waterloo. Another one from Ottawa. Toronto. Okay, great. So mostly around in Ontario here. Mexico. Wow, that's further away. Yeah, okay. So, and Manila. Wow. All right, so we're going to talk today about the School of Linguistics and Language Studies here at Carleton University in Ottawa. I'm Dr. Karen Jesney. I'm the undergraduate advisor for linguistics, and I also teach in our program. So I teach courses about how children learn language, and I also teach courses about the sounds of language. And I'll ask Sophie to introduce herself briefly.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a student ambassador for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, and welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the plan for today. We will start off, I'm going to just talk briefly about what you can do with a degree from the School of Linguistics and Language Studies. So I'll talk just about the kinds of careers that some of our graduates have pursued. Then Sophie will talk a bit about her experience as a student in our program. Then I'll talk about the degree types and options that we have here at Carleton. So there's a few different ones, and I'll just kind of explain what they are briefly and how to think about them. We have a couple of certificate programs, and so I'll talk about those, and I'll talk briefly about modern language studies, and then at the end we'll have an opportunity for questions. So if you have a question during the presentation, you can put it in the Q&A, which is just like a separate part next to the chat up there on the right-hand side of your screen. Or you can potentially type it in the chat too, but we'll be looking more at the Q&A actually, and you can upvote each other, which is kind of cool. Okay, so what can you do with your degree? So we at the School of Linguistics and Language Studies have students who pursue all kinds of things when they finish. So a really popular one that many of our students are interested in is language teaching. So teaching English as a second language or something else. Curriculum development, language revitalization programs. So there are lots of languages that have had the numbers of speakers fall over time, and there's lots of efforts, educational efforts, and also community efforts to revitalize those languages, and that's of interest to many of our students. And relatedly, language policy development is another area that students often pursue. Writing and editing, lexicography, which is dictionary development. Someone has to make the dictionaries. Marketing and communications, and computational linguistics, which is, so for example, if you have an iPhone and you talk to Siri, she understands what you said, presumably, hopefully. That kind of speech recognition software is something that linguists work in. Automatic texting, or predictive texting rather, is another thing linguists work in. All these kinds of tech jobs are available to linguists as well. And then another thing that many of our students do is pursue graduate studies in a couple of different areas. So a really popular one with our students is in speech language pathology, then relatedly audiology, which is specifically about hearing, translation and interpretation, law, or advanced research. So those are all areas where you need a master's degree or more to work, but a linguistics or applied linguistics degree prepares you really well for pursuing one of those. So that's kind of the range of things. And of course, there are all kinds of other things that people end up in as well, but those are kind of the more popular ones that touch more directly on the kind of things we do here in the School of Linguistics and Language Studies. So I'm going to ask Sophie now to talk a bit about her background and her experience. And so Sophie, you can just ask me to advance the slides when I should, okay?
Great. All right, so I graduated high school in 2018 and started at Carleton in September of 2018. I was first in a double major of linguistics, general, and journalism, and decided about a year in that that wasn't for me. So I switched into just journalism. And then I was like, wait, no, this also isn't for me. So then I switched into applied linguistics and discourse studies. and the professional writing minor, but then realized that if it was only an extra credit, I was going to do the certificate, because in this day and age, paper goes a long way with your resume. So I went into the certificate program, and that's where I am now. I'm in 4th year and looking to graduate this April. Hopefully my thesis goes well. That's what I'm up to this year. Grad school applications are underway and they're terrifying, but it's fun, and after all of the jumping around I did, I feel really happy with where I'm at. And I'm of the belief that, like, if you're not loving what you're doing, then find what you do love and like make the moves to get to that. Um, Next slide, please. So my experiences at Carleton, as you can see in the far right picture, the little circle is me playing field hockey, because that's the only picture I have of me playing field hockey for Carleton. But it took a really long time for me to find out what I enjoyed. And I played field hockey for a little bit in high school, but then started playing at Carleton because Carleton has a lot of different sports you can play, whether it's varsity or club. And if you're not interested in sports, they have a bunch of clubs regardless. We have the Applied and Theoretical Linguistics Society, which I am vice president internal of this year. And for the field hockey club, I am treasurer this year, and I'm doing the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences ambassador program as well. And all of this stuff just came in the last year, because I was struggling to find out where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. But I found a lot of what I enjoyed in the classes I enjoyed. And so that was more of ALDS 2202, which is research of writing, 3401, research and theory of academic writing. 3402 is same thing, but in workplace writing. 2 and 3604 is communications disorders. And there was a couple other classes that I found that I really enjoyed the content and really looked forward to doing the readings, which is like insane to me, because I never enjoyed readings or doing my homework in high school or anything. And then in the last year of my degree, I'm really loving it now. And if if you find what you love in your studies, you can also find what you love outside of your studies. And there's no shame in finding that balancing act of doing stuff that you love outside of academics, but also loving what you do in academics. And I'm not saying that linguistics is right for every single person. It's right for me and for what I want to do. And that is ending up being curriculum development for one. I am within the greater percentage of the population who wants to do curriculum development. For a while, I was thinking of doing lexicography. But after I did a paper on how, I'm assuming a lot of you are just coming out of high school and did the 5-paragraph essay, I did a paper on if the 5-paragraph essay was obsolete or not anymore. And it was mind-blowingly fun, which is the nerdiest thing I could ever say in my whole life. But it really helped me realize that I'm where I want to be. And that was really fun, because now 4th year, as busy as it is really enjoyable. Next slide. And yes, I did shamelessly plug in pictures of my dogs so that you guys can thoroughly enjoy. So I named the slide Doing What I Love and Loving What I Do, because this whole student experience is about finding what you love to do. Maybe that's not linguistics for the people in this session, maybe it is, but for me, I didn't know that ALDS was a program that I would enjoy. It took a while of researching and figuring out what I wanted to do, and for a while I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I was like messing up by jumping in and out of different programs about 3 times. But now that I am where I am, it's fantastic, and it was worth all of the stress and the wondering if I am doing the right thing by going into the change your program tab 3 times. But something else I really learned, especially during 2020, was that mental health does have to come first. And it's okay to not have it all figured out in your first year. It's okay if you took a break after high school, or if you're coming in right after high school and need to take a break in the middle of it. You can always ask for help and stop anything if it becomes too much, and ask for help to balance everything, because college and university is a really stressful period. It's a weird jump, especially now that some people who are coming in not from Ottawa, they're going to be moving away from home, going to meet new people, and it's a really crucial period in your life where you're learning about life and what you want to do and your career, which ends up being really stressful to think about, especially because I'm trying to hide from going out into the real world by applying for grad school. But it is always allowed to just stop if it becomes too much and ask for help. We have a lot of good um, people in this department. Even though it's a small department, it is a loving department who like really cares about the students. And something I was told in high school was your professors are only going to know you by your student number. But all of the professors and administrators I've talked to in this program have called me by name and have never actually used my student number. I'm the only one who memorized it. But the last thing I want to leave you guys with is your goals affect your output, and your output affects your goals. So if you have short little goals that help scaffold your experience, your output will be much wider and bigger in the end, as in like slow is steady and steady is fast. And your output affects your goals. So once you have a good enough or like a decent output, you'll see your goals start to get bigger and bigger. There's a question over here. How was it switching programs for you? How is the process as the whole? Do you have to restart at square one, or do you take certain credits into consideration? Switching out of programs was actually fairly easy because I was in journalism and linguistics. I had a bunch of the prerequisites already down. And so my journalism credits came in as electives. And I think I was about a semester behind at most, but then I caught up in my third year by taking some second year courses in first semester. So they don't keep you at square one, but if you have like credits that are way out in left field that like are not a prerequisite, like let's say you were in engineering and then moved to linguistics, you might have a bit of a uphill climb to get back to baseline. And I think that's it for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. All right, so we will have more time if you want to ask Sophie some other questions at the end of the presentation as well. We will be here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the degree options in the School of Linguistics and School of Linguistics and Language Studies, so that you get a sense of exactly what kinds of degrees we offer. So in the School of Linguistics and Language Studies, we have two majors. We also have a bunch of minors in different languages, but we have two majors that you can do. So the first is in Applied Linguistics and Discourse Studies, which is what Sophie is majoring in. And the second is in linguistics. So we often abbreviate this as like ALDS and Ling. So if I say that, that's what I mean here. So what is the difference between these two things is often something that people kind of struggle with. And it's not just people who have just heard this terminology. It's kind of hard to divide them up sometimes. So I think maybe the best way to think about it is just to think about what kind of questions the two different disciplines ask. So in Applied Linguistics and Discourse Studies, we tend to think more so about language in its social context. So language as it relates to people out in the world and their interactions and their relationships. So the kinds of courses you might take in ALDS are things, answer questions or probe questions like, how do we learn a second language? How can languages be taught effectively? How can written communication be made more effective and more efficient? Okay, so these are all kinds of uses of language in society. Or what kind of language policies can help protect endangered languages? And how does language influence society and drive social movements? And what role does language play in law and justice? Okay, so it's kind of like big picture, the kinds of questions that we're looking at when we're thinking about language in the broader social context, which is really the focus of most people who study in Applied Linguistics and Discourse Studies. So in ALDS, we have two kind of degree options. They're both Bachelor of Arts degrees. So there's a Bachelor of Arts with major in linguistics, which is a 15 credit or 3-year degree. And then there's a Bachelor of Arts with honors in applied linguistics and discourse studies, which is 20 credits or a 4-year degree. So all 4-year degrees at Carleton are honors degrees. So really it's about here whether you're in a 3 or a 4-year degree. And then the honors degree has additional things that you can do within it. So you can do an honors thesis like Sophie talked about. There's more advanced coursework you can take, etc. Normally, if you were planning to go to graduate school, you would want to take an honors degree program. In linguistics, which is the other degree field of our school, we tend to think more about language as a cognitive object. So we're interested, of course, in language out in society. That's where we use language, but the courses in linguistics focus more on language as it exists in the human mind. So we ask questions like, how can we best characterize the patterns we see in language? People talk a particular way. How can we describe that effectively? What do all languages have in common? And how do languages change over time? We also ask questions like, how is linguistic knowledge represented in the brain? So in a very neurological level in some cases, but also sometimes more in terms of modeling what might be happening. How do children acquire their first language? And what are language disorders and how are they treated? Okay, so that's kind of the types of questions that we tend to probe more in linguistics. So for myself, in my own research, I tend to focus on questions like the second one up here right now, like how do children acquire their first language? And in this kind of bubble picture over on the left, we have language, and in our use of language, we have some words, we have sentences, words, and sounds. I tend to focus more on the sounds in my own research. But we have people who focus on all of these kinds of questions I've just mentioned in our program. So the options in the Bachelor of Arts of Linguistics are a little bit more so than in the ALDS program. So ALDS, you can choose between the 15 credit or 20 credit degree, and that's kind of where you get, and then you choose what courses you want to take within those. In the Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics, though, we have a couple of other options. So we again have this choice to do either a BA with a major in linguistics for 15 credits, that's the 3-year degree, or a BA with honors in linguistics for 20 credits. And then if you are doing a BA with honors in linguistics, you can additionally choose a concentration. So concentrations are optional. You don't have to choose one in the Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics, but many students do choose one. And we have 2 concentrations. So the first is a concentration in linguistic theory, and the second is a concentration in psycholinguistics and communication disorders. So on the next slide, I just define those a little bit for us. So first of all, just to know that the kinds of courses you take in a linguistics degree, they're really only affected by your concentration once you get to maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, especially 3rd and 4th year, really. The first year part of the program is actually pretty much the same, not just for linguistics, but also for applied linguistics and discourse studies. So it's more as you get to more advanced years that a concentration would become relevant in your course choices. If you choose a concentration in linguistic theory, what you end up doing is taking more advanced courses in phonology, which is the study of how sounds are organized, syntax, which is the study of sentence structure, morphology, which is the study of word structure, and semantics, which is the study of linguistic meaning. So all of our students take some courses in phonology and syntax, but you would take potentially more advanced courses if that was your concentration, linguistic theory. Our other concentration is in psycholinguistics and communication disorders, and this concentration was developed specifically to kind of help guide the studies of people who are primarily interested in perhaps going into speech-language pathology or audiology in graduate school, though certainly anyone can do this concentration. So the more advanced courses in this area that are required look at things like language processing. How do we keep track of what's going on in language in real time in our brains? First language acquisition, communication disorders, and statistics. In linguistics, we also have a Bachelor of Science program, actually, and we're one of only 2 universities in Canada that has a Bachelor of Science in Linguistics program. The other is at the University of Victoria. So the Bachelor of Science in Linguistics is an honors degree, so it's 20 credits. And within the Bachelor of Science degree, you choose, again, one of the two concentrations, linguistic theory or psycholinguistics and communication disorders. And then you additionally have to choose a focus. So a focus is like a cluster of courses that you would take in this more, in the Bachelor of Science degree. And you choose either neuroscience, psychology, or computer science, depending on what your interests are. So the two original ones we had were the neuroscience and the psychology focus, which were kind of developed thinking more about people who were interested in speech language pathology or audiology. But the computer science focus is kind of focused more towards people who are interested perhaps in language and technology. So speech recognition, things like that. So Leah is asking a question in the chat here, and I'll just answer it. So would you have to choose your concentration before your first year, or can you choose it in your second or third year? You definitely don't have to choose it before your first year. You can easily choose it in your second or third year. And if you choose one and then you decide it's not the right one for you, you can easily change it as well. So the nice thing about the concentrations is that all the courses in the actual concentrations are linguistics courses. So you can add a concentration or change your concentration without losing any credits. Sometimes you might need to take an extra course that you missed if you're changing it way late, but you can easily do it in second or third year. All right, so just to mention here, we have a couple of other options that I think sometimes people don't know exist. So it is possible, if you're very interested in two areas, to do what's called a combined honors degree. So a popular option with our students is to do a combined honors between linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies. So this is kind of like taking language in social context and language as it exists in minds, parts of both of those, and doing a combined honors degree. And this is sufficiently popular that it actually has its own special name, which is the Combined Honors in Linguistics and Discourse Studies. It's also possible, though, to do a combined honors with linguistics or applied linguistics and discourse studies and any other field that allows combined honors degrees, which is a lot of fields here at Carleton. So as Sophie mentioned before, that originally she had been doing a combined honors in linguistics and journalism. You could do a combined honors in linguistics and psychology, linguistics and French, linguistics and biology. Or you could do a combined honors in applied linguistics and discourse studies and any of those same things, or something totally different in English. And I don't know what, I'm just running out of ideas here, but it's really up to you. We also have minors. So if you were a major in some other program, but you have an interest in linguistics or applied linguistics and discourse studies, you can do a minor for part of your elective credits. So the minors are 4.0 credits, and you take courses as part of your electives to get kind of this additional qualification. And we have that for both of our degree programs. So I think one of the things that's kind of cool about this, and that makes Carleton really unique, is that we have these two kind of degree options in this field. So linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies. And we have a lot of faculty members working in both of them, which is not common. Most schools kind of offer one or the other, or have like a few classes in applied linguistics within their linguistics program, but they don't have like full-fledged programs in both of these things. So the way we have this structured here, you end up having the opportunity to learn about language from multiple perspectives. So you can take courses in both linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies. And in fact, in first year, you have to take one course in each of those areas for your degree in our school. If you really like, you could consider the combined honors Bachelor of Arts in linguistics and discourse studies. And if you start out in one, you can easily switch to the other, especially in first year. So Sophie mentioned before, it's not that hard to change your degree, your major at Carleton. That's very true. And it's especially easy to change between linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies, because they already have their first year pretty much in common. I see a question in the chat also about combined honors degrees and how many credits we do end up having to take. A combined honors degree is 20 credits. So it's the same number of credits as just like the normal honors Bachelor of Arts in linguistics or applied linguistics and discourse studies. So it's the same number of credits, but more of your credits are devoted to your two major areas and you have fewer electives. So normally a linguistics degree has 9.5 credits of linguistics courses and 10.5 credits of electives. So you could do like a minor or something. But if you do the combined honors degree, normally a combined honors degree is about 14 to 16 credits. It depends on the two areas, and then the rest are electives. So it's the same number of credits, same length of time, just more credits in the major and fewer electives. So in first year, the normal course load at Carleton is 5.0 credits. So that's 10 one-semester courses. Not everyone takes that much. Sometimes people find that it's too much for them because of their other obligations or what have you. But that's kind of what these like 3 and 4 year degree timeline is based on. So the normal course load is 5 credits. And in your first year, if you're majoring in linguistics or applied linguistics and discourse studies, you would take 2 or better 3 courses in this area. So we have introductory courses, applied linguistics and discourse studies 1, which is ALDS 1001, which everyone takes, and Ling 1001, which is Introduction to Linguistics 1. And then we also have a second Introduction to Linguistics 2, Ling 1002, which focuses a bit more on some of the things that are of a special concern in the psycholinguistics and communication disorder concentration. Then additionally, as I'll talk about in just a second, I think, we have within our school a language proficiency requirement. So we require students to show some degree of proficiency in a language other than English. And the kind of normal way to do this is to take 1.0 credits in a language other than English at Carleton. So lots of students will do that during their first year, and lots of students love it and end up minoring in a language. That's really common as well. And then you can expand your horizons and take other courses to meet the breadth requirement, or if you're in the Bachelor of Science degree, to look at your focus. The Bachelor of Science degree also has some required courses in math and chemistry and biology. In first year, you can take first year seminars, which are a really great opportunity to have a kind of smaller class experience. And then you can take electives too to explore other areas that you might not have had the opportunity to ever explore before. There are lots of options at university that are you wouldn't even imagine in high school. In your later years, you end up taking more specialized courses in your areas of interest. So you kind of focus more in on things that are of interest to you and take more advanced courses. You can complete a practicum. We have a couple of ways you can do this. So in the psycholinguistics and communication disorders concentration of the linguistics degree, there's a practicum course at 4th year that students can complete if they have the prerequisites, where you essentially shadow or work with a speech language pathologist 1 day a week for a semester. There's also a practicum in the in the certificate in teaching English as a second language that I'll talk about a bit more in a few minutes. You can add one of those certificates, like the certificate in professional writing that Sophie talked about, or the certificate in teaching English as a second language, and then participate in research. So there's honors theses, honors projects, etc. So just to give you some sense of kind of the types of questions that students ask in their honors theses and do research on, I just thought from my mind of some topics that people have done in the past couple of years. So for example, last year I had a student who was interested in this question of how face masks, like we've all been wearing lately, affect speech perception. So does the fact that when you're wearing a speech mask, you can't see a person's lips, does this impede or affect their ability to accurately perceive speech sounds in any way? Another question that someone worked on last year was, how is phrasing in music similar to phrasing in language? And to what extent are they kind of using the same mechanisms? Another student looked at how the frequency of words in American Sign Language affects the magnitude or the size of the gestures that are used. Because we know in speech language that there are lots of ways in which more frequent words that we say more often, get shorter and more reduced and hardly even pronounced. And then another kind of question that one of my students worked on a couple of years ago was, what happens when French speakers borrow words from English? How do they adapt them? To what extent do they adapt them? Does it depend on whether it's a task where they're reading versus a task where they're just talking off the top of their heads? So I mentioned a couple of certificate programs, and I'll just touch on them briefly here. So the one Sophie mentioned is the Certificate in Professional Writing. This is a certificate that can be completed concurrently with your degree. So this means that while you're doing your normal degree, you're taking courses for the certificate, and you still end up taking the same number of total credits usually, so 20 credits. But in addition to your degree, you have this additional certificate that shows that you have especially studied, I guess, in this case, professional writing. So it's 5.0 credits that are taken from your electives, and some also count towards the ALDS major. And it includes courses in writing for different contexts, grammar, publishing, all these kinds of things that you might need if you were hoping to work in professional writing. Some of the courses, as I mentioned, count towards your ALDS major, but they all count towards your degree regardless. And this is a program that you would apply for once you were at Carleton. In your second or third year, you would apply to join the Certificate in Professional Writing, and then from that point on, you could complete some of the courses that are a little bit more restricted in their enrollment because they're very, very popular, as it turns out. So I've put a link here that you could follow, but it's quite easy. If you were just Google as well, Carleton Certificate in Professional Writing, you would find the resources. The other certificate program that we have in our school is the Certificate in Teaching English as a Second Language, and this is very popular as well. So like the Certificate in Professional Writing, this can be completed concurrently with your degree. So you do it while you're doing your degree. It's also 5.0 credits, all of certificates are. And it includes courses in the theory and teaching and practice of English as a second language. So it includes a 1.0, like a full year practicum course where you work in a classroom under the supervision and mentorship of an English as a second language teacher. Some of the courses count towards your linguistics or your ALDS major. It's heavily overlapping, and the rest you would just put in as part of your electives. And all of the courses, of course, apply to your degree. So you can actually do the Certificate in Professional Writing or the CTESOL regardless of what your major is, but they fit especially well with the linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies majors. And again, this is a program that you would apply for in your second or third year, and then complete the coursework for in your third and fourth year. So I see that our host has put in the chat the links that I had here for the two certificate programs if you want to check those out or copy them down. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is modern language. So here at the School of Linguistics and Language Studies, we are also the home for all the language programs except for French. So French has its own department, and you can go to their orientation session if you want. But here in SLALS, we teach courses about language, like how to speak different languages. So as we all know, there are many, many, many languages in the world. Here on the screen, you can see a chart of the 10 most spoken languages in the world. And the ones with those arrows on them are languages that we teach here at Carleton. And we teach some others as well. So we do teach Mandarin, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, and Japanese. But we also have some others. So we also teach American Sign Language, Arabic, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, and also on occasion some less commonly taught languages. So we've taught Kiswahili in the past, Hungarian in the past, a number of indigenous languages in the past as well. Oftentimes our programs in indigenous languages are taught during the summer by community members in conjunction with some of the regular instructional faculty in our school. The ones with stars here are languages where we actually have a minor available. So this means that you can take courses, not just first year courses, but all the way up to fourth year and actually get a minor in one of these areas. And doing a minor in linguistics or minor in a language while majoring in linguistics or ALDS programs is super duper popular. It's really common among our majors. So students from all kinds of different programs do language minors, and all the language minors are 4.0 credits. And the typical thing is to take first year, second year, third year, fourth year in a language, but sometimes there are other opportunities as well. So for example, in the Japanese minor, we have third year courses that are specifically about reading kanji, which is a kind of special skill, I guess, that takes extra practice in Japanese. All right, so I've said pretty much all I've prepared for today. So this is going to be our kind of question period. So I can see that there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. And if you want to add more questions for either me or Sophie, go for it. You can do that as well. So one of the first questions here, if we wanted to do a double major, will we have to apply for that once you are in university? So you can apply for that right out of high school if you want. Or you can apply for it once you're in university. So it's either is good. All of the double majors are called combined honors degrees at Carleton. So that's what you would be looking for. And you could choose like combined honors in this and that, like whatever the two things are. There are a few things that you can't do combined honors in. Like for example, I don't think you can do combined honors in engineering with anything else. But linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies have a lot of combined honors options available. So either or both, I guess, as you prefer. I'm seeing here a question, have you or Sophie personally learned a language throughout the program? So when I was in university, I did learn languages, but I'll let Sophie answer this here as a student maybe.
So I grew up going to French school, so I didn't take French in university because I was sick and tired of it. But I ended up taking American Sign Language for the first couple of years of my degree. I loved it, but I didn't have enough time to make it into a minor because when you hit the second year level, they start, the content started going faster. And my prof was saying how if you are going to move forward with this, you have to put in the time and the effort. And I said, not for me. So I retained the alphabet and some numbers and some vocabulary, but otherwise, I can't say that I fully learned it. But I did get the credits.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, maybe sometimes students are not sure like how much of a commitment it is. You can just take a half credit of a language if you want. You don't have to commit to doing a whole minor. You can just take, and lots of our students will take like first year of a few different languages just to see what they like and to learn a bit of different ones. Okay. So if you have more questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm going to pop my contact information up here as well. So I'm the undergraduate advisor for linguistics and applied linguistics and discourse studies. So if you have questions about like the structure of the program or what you need to be taking, I'm a good person to ask about that. If you have questions about general admissions, I am not a good person to ask about that. You should be contacting admissions instead. You can also find a lot more information on our school website, carleton.ca/SLALS, which stands for School of Linguistics and Language Studies. And down the left-hand side menu on that website, you'll find options for all of our different types of programs. So for linguistics, applied linguistics and discourse studies, modern languages, what have you. So I'll put that there. Okay. Right, so we have a few more minutes for questions if anyone has one. Okay. So I've seen a few here. Yeah, so Leah's asking, what do students do after they finish the program in terms of jobs, future studies, etc.? So as I was kind of mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, there are lots and lots of options here. So in terms of jobs, I've seen people get kind of right out of their undergraduate degree. I've seen people do things like being educational assistants or working in clinics as kind of paraprofessionals, people working in marketing, writing, also teaching English as a second language. These are kind of or also sometimes into the government through FSWEPT, whatever they call that. And then lots of students go on to graduate school in speech language pathology or audiology or law or all kinds of different things that might be of interest to you in those areas. Okay. So I just missed it. Is it a good idea to take a minor in a foreign language even without any prior exposure to the tongue before entrance to Carleton? Absolutely. So the first year classes in languages at Carleton presuppose, like they assume, that you don't know anything about the language. So you can definitely start from absolute square one and minor in a language at Carleton. That is very doable. Whether it's a good idea, I guess, depends on your interest, but it's certainly, that's what our first year courses are kind of geared toward, is teaching you from the very beginning. Okay. What do students do after they, so I think we've answered that one. So I see a question from Valen. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. If I were to want to take the Japanese minor, for example, are there any prerequisites required for the program? No, there are not. So the only prerequisite is interest, I guess. So you don't have to have studied Japanese before. In all of the modern language programs, before you can register for your first class, you do have to do kind of a placement questionnaire test, and they'll place you in the appropriate class. So if you already have studied some Japanese, you might end up in second year Japanese, like just skip first year Japanese. That's possible. But that's not necessary. You could end up in the very first class and go from there. So there aren't any prerequisites, but if you do have some background, you can place into a higher class that's appropriate to challenge you based on what you already know at the beginning. Yeah. All right. Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions if there are any. Otherwise, I'll just mention that I'm going to be over starting at 11 o'clock in the booth. So if you exited this session, at the top of the screen in AirMeet, there's a tab that says something like academics. And if you go in there, you'll find these like booths, tables kind of thing, for all different types of programs. And so I'm going to be in the School of Linguistics and Language Studies one, and you can come by at any time and ask questions there as well if you have more individual questions or just something you thought of later. I'll be there from 11 until 2. All right, so Sophie, is there anything you'd like to say?
I think I'm good, but this was a great presentation, and I'm glad I could be a part of it.
Oh, I'm really glad you were here too. So I would really encourage anyone who has questions to reach out, come by the booth. And I guess that will probably be will be it for today. So this presentation was, I think it was recorded, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you'll be able to rewatch parts of it if you would like afterwards as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.